Sweet King Martin, sweet Queen Coretta, sweet Brother Malcolm, sweet Queen Betty, sweet Mother Mary, sweet Father Joseph, sweet Jesus. We made it in America.
Because of them, we can.
In 1947, segregation was normal at Drill Hill Park. In 1948, the Young Progressives of Maryland and the Baltimore Tennis Club decided to challenge the park segregation laws by crossing into the courts that was for whites only. Upon doing so, they forever changed the courses of Baltimore's history. By challenging the ideas of segregation, these players were saying it was wrong for blacks and whites to be separated. Blacks and whites should be able to swim in the same pool, go to the same zoo at the same time, and play tennis on the court.
These players were leaders in the civil rights movement, a blazing trail of equality for us to follow. These players stood up against oppression and gave the city an example to follow. Although they were arrested, the stand they took changed the city.
Because of them, public parks are open spaces for all together, regardless of race.
Because of them, children of all races could play on any basketball court or playground they wanted.
Because of them, Baltimore had to acknowledge the humanity of African Americans.
Because of them, we can.
It is 1951. Baltimore Polytechnic Institute is an all-white school offering the best education in the city. Subscribing on the myth that African Americans were educationally inferior, Baltimore City Public Schools and Poly refused to voluntarily integrate. In the face of great adversity, 16 courageous African Americans, with the help of their families, the NAACP, the National Urban League, and the black community, they challenged the law that excluded them from the city's highly selective A-course college prep classes. After a drawn-out legal challenge led by Baltimore and Thurgood Marshall, the city debated creating separate A-course classes for African Americans at Frederick Douglass High School, eventually voting 5-3 to allow Poly's A-course classes to be integrated. This integration happened a full 2 years before Brown versus Board and 4 years before the rest of the city followed suit.
13 young men would eventually enroll in Poly's 8th course and would leave behind their friends, teachers, and everything that was familiar. They would carry with them the hopes and dreams of the entire Baltimore African American community.
These men knew they had larger responsibility than just themselves. Whether fair or not, they had responsibilities to prove African Americans deserve equal treatment.
These young men faced an all-white student body with a vocal set that did not welcome them.
They would face a new set of teachers, some of whom did not think they could learn at the same level as their white peers.
They would regularly face insults, threats, and racist remarks.
They were conspired against by the adults who separated them into different classes.
Although in a school of over 2,000 students, they would constantly feel isolated and alone, not seeing any other black students in their classes.
They had to deal with the fact that they were in a school where they were not wanted.
They faced the adversity so that someday, students in Baltimore City will only be judged by their merit, not the color of their skin.
Because of them, we can.
Well, you can tell everybody. Yeah, you can tell everybody. Go ahead and tell everybody. I'm the man, I'm the man, I'm the man. Yes, I am, yes, I am, yes, I am. I'm the man, I'm the man, I'm the man.
Being from Baltimore can be hard sometimes. People always judge us based on what they see on TV or hear on the wire.
Most people don't realize the essential role Baltimore played in the civil rights movement.
Back in its heyday, Pennsylvania Avenue was the center of the black life in Baltimore. There were dozens of black-owned theaters, businesses, shops, clubs. When you came here, you had to be dressed to the nines.
The people that frequented Pennsylvania Avenue were who's of African American history. It wouldn't be uncommon to see people like Billie Holiday or Cab Calloway on Pennsylvania Avenue.
Even Marcus Garvey made a few appearances.
most famous men in history grew up only a few streets over.
Thurgood Marshall was the grandson of a slave who would go on to be the first African American on the Supreme Court.
Thurgood Marshall's childhood was shaped by working in a hat shop on Pennsylvania Avenue and attending segregated public schools.
When Marshall applied to the University of Maryland Law School, he was denied because of the color of his skin. Thurgood Marshall did not let that stop him. He joined the legal counsel of the NAACP. He was appointed to the federal bench and eventually was appointed to the highest court in the land by President Johnson. His time on the bench was incredibly important, ruling on some of the most consequential cases in American history. Thurgood Marshall is an example of what perseverance in the face of great obstacles look like. He did not let the setbacks stop him. In fact, he found ways to overcome them and eliminate them.
Thurgood Marshall should not only be considered the pride of Baltimore, but what we want all Americans to strive for. Because of him, we can.
Who is Dr. Roland M. Patterson?
Well, Frank's your ex. Let me tell you about him.
We are at the Green Spring Avenue School building, named after Dr. Roland M. Patterson Sr., the first African-American superintendent of Baltimore City Public Schools.
Dr. Roland M. Patterson Sr. was the 15th school chief in Baltimore City, serving our community for a 4-year term. Baltimore City Public Schools was the first major institution in all of Baltimore to be run by an African-American. His forward-thinking style quickly made him enemies, but he continued to push for change. Dr. Patterson was a man of passion and ideas who left a lasting mark on the city school system.
Because of him, it has been acknowledged that the color of your skin does not prevent you from being a leader of a major institution.
Because of him, Baltimore has accepted visions that help to shape the future of our public school system.
Because of him, Baltimore City Schools continue to be a source of jobs and leadership opportunities for the African American community.
Because of him, African Americans, including women, are able to rise to the top ranks of our city, serving as chief academic officers, CEOs, and even the mayor of Baltimore City.
Because of him, we can.
The year is 2002. With the exception of few, middle schools across the city are failing. All 4 elementary schools in Park Heights are struggling to educate their students. At this point in history, the sad fact is that kids from Park Heights are not getting what they deserve, but that would all change. It was those brave students from the first 2 KIPP schools that would change everything. They signed up for a school that did not yet have desks, chairs, books, or even a cafeteria. They risked what was familiar to come to a school that made one simple promise. If you give everything you have, we will be with you every step of the way, to and through college.
It was those courageous students in the first 2 classes that would change what many in the state of Maryland thought was possible.
Critics say kids can't go to school from 7:30 to 5.
People said going to school on Saturday was too much.
Giving 2 to 3 hours of homework a night, those kids would never do that.
Critics said the KIPP wouldn't work. That Park Heights students wouldn't care that much about their education. They simply can't be successful. It's impossible.
But those brave students in the pride of 2010 and 2011 would prove impossible is nothing. It was those students that would make the whole state take notice of what is being done in Park Heights. It was those students that would make history.
But those 2 classes will go on to achieve more than what anyone thought possible, making them the highest performing middle school in the state.
They outperformed their white peers in Montgomery and Howard County. Their scores were so impressive that they received attention all over the country. They were visited by the mayor, governor, and secretary of education.
Their scores would spark the charter movement all across the city. Leaders would try and mimic the success of KIPP.
When they went on to graduate high school, they would be accepted into colleges at a rate that Park Heights neighborhood had never seen. It was these courageous students of the pride of 2010 and 11 that would forever change Park Heights.
Because of them, we can.
Because of them, we know that if you work hard and believe, anything is possible.
Because of them, when you graduate KIPP, high schools want you to apply because of the legacy they create.
Because of them, when you say you go to KIPP, People take notice.
Because of them, we can.
To Kipsters
and future Kipsters.
If we can do it,
so can you.
If you hear this message, wherever you stand, I'm calling every woman, calling every man. We're the generation, we can't afford to wait. The future started yesterday, and we're already late. We've been looking for a song to sing. Search for a leader, but the leader was